Good afternoon, my dear friends. My name is Sarita. Welcome back. I have a double candle review for you today from the company Root Candle in Medina, Ohio. These are beeswax candles or beeswax blend. I have two summery candles for you that I have been burning over the last couple weeks, and I have been burning them, and I have burned them all the way down. So this first one is a Coastal Sunrise, and I burned it all the way down to those nubs right there. This was kind of a nice creamy grapefruit color. And then the second one that I burned quite a bit was a sugared grapefruit, which was a grapefruit candle, but not colored like a grapefruit. It was like this yellow color. And again, I burned it all the way down. These burned like a dream, which kind of stuns me a little bit because my experience up to this point with these Root 3 wicks is that you may have a good 2 or 3 burns right at the top that are a little painful, that take hours and hours for them to burn all the way to the edges. They have puny wicks during that period. I mean, it can just be really, really bad. Usually after those 2 or 3 burns, it clears, they find their footing, and they're good for the rest of their life. These did not suffer from that from the beginning. I mean, from the word go, they burned beautifully, quickly. I don't think I had one bad burn on either one of them all the way down. You lit it up, they were ready to go, burned all the way. I mean, performance on these in terms of that burn was flawless. They did burn fairly quickly, so there is that. The ones up to this point that I had could burn not so great at the beginning, but really it was a much slower burn all the way down. These burned very, very quickly, which makes me wonder if the formula was maybe a little bit different, had less beeswax. Like, I don't know. I really don't know, but they performed great. So let's take sugared grapefruit first, because honestly, it's the one that I would not repurchase, and I'm not sure that I can recommend. So the blurb on the website says, quote, "Candied citrus envelop the bright, effervescent fragrance of the grapefruit, warming the typically sour, bitter notes to the perfect combination of sweet and tangy to create the perfect grapefruit fragrance," which is frankly a very convoluted and wordy way of saying this is like a grapefruit that has been sugared. It's just way too many words. They're correct about that. It is a more sweet and sugary grapefruit. But I think it kind of loses its distinctive grapefruitiness, because when you mitigate or you soften up the distinctive tangy, sour, tart notes of a grapefruit, you end up with something that's really not very discernibly grapefruit. It just kind of then at that point smells or tastes like an orange or any other of the more generic citrus fruits. I'm one of those people that developed a taste for grapefruit, and once you do that, it is really hard for you to actually indulge in oranges because they immediately seem so sweet. And usually the transition is to like have a grapefruit with sugar on it. But when you get to that place where, like black coffee, you just have grapefruit, like straight, no chaser, no sugar, you really get to experience everything that makes a grapefruit a grapefruit. Close parentheses. This candle is like a sugared grapefruit, which is to say that it's really pretty orangey. And I don't know that if you smelled it, you would immediately think grapefruit. Any more than you would any other kind of citrus fruit. So in that sense, kind of generic, and there's nothing else to it. I mean, the scent notes are correct. It's basically all that it is. For my money, I like the Kringle Grapefruit and Rosemary that came out this year a lot better. Because I think that it really captures the bitterness and the tartness of a grapefruit. And I know that a lot of people said or reacted very strongly, very negatively against what they thought was a really strong rosemary smell because the candle was called Grapefruit and Rosemary. To my nose, I wasn't getting a whole lot of rosemary. But it did have a very strong pith and peel kind of grapefruit smell. So it foregrounded everything that is different about a grapefruit than from the more softer or more taster friendly citrus fruits. And for that reason, I love that grapefruit candle. And I think that's what's missing from this one. But if you don't love all of that sourness and tartness of a grapefruit, you might like this candle. The problem is that the throw on it was like a 4. And I feel like a 4 might be a little bit generous. So it can't be recommended on that level. There are, as I've said before, certain candle fragrance notes that come forward in a fairly easy way. So spices like cinnamon, coniferous trees like pine or spruce or something like that come across pretty well. And high citrus notes tend to come across really well as well. So for a citrus candle to be in that 4 region, it's not good. It's really not good. And it's just kind of not one that I can recommend. However, it did burn like a dream. So if you want a really pretty muted citrus note and very little else, it might be one to look at. But for me, I would not repurchase it. Let's go on to the much more interesting one, which is Coastal Sunrise. Looks like this. Also burned like an absolute champ. And it looks a little bit discolored there at the bottom. It might have been, maybe more than the grapefruit one. But a lot of this is just a lot of carbon residue. It wasn't transforming the fragrance or messing with it. All right, so Coastal Sunrise. I was burning this one, and as it burned, I thought to myself, this one reminds me a lot of my 2 candles that I've been talking about a lot recently, which is Somerset from Kringle and its very close sibling, which is Bath & Body Works Salted Amber and Vetiver. And I just reviewed both of them, and I said that they were so similar, they might even be seen as dupes. And I actually think that this candle is pretty reminiscent of those 2 as well, but a little bit more distant. I'm beginning to think if I'm like crazy. Maybe this is messing with my mind. Why does everything smell like Somerset? I really think it does though. So let me talk about all 3 of them. For my money, Somerset and Salted Amber Vetiver are so close, they're like sisters. They're like siblings. Super close, super close. This is like the cousin to those 2 sisters, okay? And obviously a different aesthetic because it goes kind of like red-orange rather than the blue. The notes here on Coastal Sunrise are, and I quote, waves of water lily and sea kelp combine with lush tropical fruits sweetened with a touch of fresh coconut. Yeah, fresh coconut, full stop. And then the entire candle is categorized as a fruit candle. So you can see with the water lily and the sea kelp that they are kind of going kind of a little bit in an aquatic direction, which is a little similar to these, which also have a little bit of an aquatic overtone to them. They just didn't quite go with the aquatic like branding. They leaned into the fruit component instead. And I do think this is a very fruity candle for sure. They call out, just says lush tropical fruits and coconut. I'm not getting a whole lot of coconut from this, but what I am getting is just a very nice, I don't even know if I would call it a tropical fruit. It could be pear, it could be apple, it could be berry, frankly. I would say it comes across more berried than anything else, like a berry or a fruit, something juicy, but obviously not distinctive enough to call out a specific kind of fruit to it. reminder, let's talk about the fruits and all of these. Kringle gives us the most extensive list of the fruits that are in this one. Pear, kumquat, pomelo, bergamot, red fruit, berry, peach, and apricot. So pretty much the entire realm. But also really tries to capture all of those different fruits. Obviously with the kumquat, the pomelo, the bergamot, those are in your citrusy range, and that would come across as like a tropical kind of thing. But then it's got the red fruit and the berry and the pear. Peach and apricot is just warming that fruit up a little bit, deepening it and making it a little bit more juicy and berry forward. So that's why to me, like they would be reminiscent to each other in that. This one obviously has very sparse notes because it's just the ones that are listed right here. But in the middle are fresh orange flower. And when I did review this, I think that what they mean by that is not necessarily a traditional orange flower, which actually doesn't smell very fruity, but I really think they are leaning into the orange as a distinctive fruit component there. So what they're trying to say is that it's basically a citrusy and a floral, because that's definitely what you get. You get those high bergamot, perfumey kind of sharp citrusy, which makes this, yeah, fruity. Fruity in that sense. I don't know that the fruit is carried through all the way through. So these two are more fruity than this one is, because it kind of leans into the citrus notes and then keeps it there in that dry place, which is the formula for a lot of colognes and perfumes as well. This one leans very perfumey. So then there is a good floral component in all three of them. So once again, Somerset has probably the most extensive list. Jasmine, gardenia, and peonies. So definitely a white floral. And there is a white floral. I would say that the white floral is in equal measure to the fruit in this candle. This one is floral too, but I would say this one leans into the fruit a little bit more. But it did say waves of water lily and sea kelp. So there is definitely some lily notes, some white floral in here. But I would say that it's more berry and fruity than it is white floral. Here, of course, they've got the orange flower, so they definitely have a floral component. Yeah, and I would say that it's very powerfully floral and very powerfully bergamot, like citrusy, right up in there. It could also be like a pineapple or a kiwi. You've just got a really high acidic kind of fruit component up on top there. And then we have creamy base on all of them, frankly. So for the Somerset one, you have musk, sandalwood, amber, and vanilla, which is kind of your traditional tropical creamy base. And it's very basey, very basey. So it's got the floral component and the fruit component in here. I would say that that's about like 40% of the candle. And then 60% of it is that beautiful creamy vanilla amber base. This one is also actually called salted amber, so we know it's got amber in it. Other than that, it has vetiver, so it's going kind of in a green herbal direction. I said that it was a little musky as well, which there's musk in here, yeah? So the musk, the citrus, the floral makes this a very high perfumey kind of candle. It is creamy, but it's a little bit sharper and more perfumey than the other two candles. This one is most creamy, and then this one, other than it says sea kelp. So once again, the sea kelp and the vetiver might be kind of close. You've got that like funky kind of green dimension to it. Maybe a little bit herbal. This one is not herbal necessarily, but it is very creamy. And I'm kind of surprised that they didn't call out cream, because this one is almost like a salted, again with the salted, it's a very salted, almost caramel vanilla. think like Sol de Janeiro, for instance. Kind of a Sol de Janeiro caramel vanilla base, and then on top that like really fruity dimension with a little bit of floral. So I would say all three of them have a creamy component, have a floral component, and have a fruit component, and they're all solidly in that like beachy aquatic kind of feeling genre. So I really think they're super similar. Of the three of them, this one's the most perfumey, this one is the most creamy, and this one is the most fruity, but they kind of all contribute. And again, the closer ones being the siblings, the two blues, and then this one being more of a cousin. This one is less perfumey than the other two are. And that's partly because the fruit component that is here is a little bit more berry forward than it is citrusy. And so it's just a little bit lower in the register from like the really high citrus component, which is more of a cologne and perfume like formula. Yeah, I like all three of them. I would say the strength and throw, obviously flawless burn, but I would say the strength and throw on this one was like a 6, maybe a 6.5, which I would have liked a little bit more than that, but 6 or 6.5 is decent. And as I've begun to say in many of my reviews, many like pretty reputable candle companies are starting to top out at around 6. So 6 is fine for me. It's fine. 6.5. This one right here was more like, I would say a 6. A 5.5 to a 6, but they're very similar. These two are super similar. This one was definitely the strongest, and it's probably because it was the most perfumey and the most sharp and less creamy. So this one was more like a 7 to a 7.5. But kind of all within the same realm. So would I repurchase Coastal Sunrise? Yes, I would. And for those of you that really like the vibe of either Somerset or Salted Amber and Vetiver, you might very much like this as well. For those of you who find either one of them a little bit too perfumey, this would also be a really great one to check out. It's got a lot of those similar notes, but because it has less citrus in it, it's just a little bit more berry and fruit forward and is less like traditional perfume cologne. So yeah, I'd repurchase it for sure. I would have liked it to have been more in the 7 realm, but it's okay. I'll take it. And I do think that it's interesting enough, whereas like the grapefruit candle, I just didn't find interesting. So probably unlikely to be one that you would be burning unless you wanted to burn it right now in the very like high weeks here of August. Otherwise, maybe one to check out for next spring and summer. I recommend it. All of the information is down below, and I'll catch you in the next one.